Brian, welcome to the Total Therapy Training Podcast, a podcast where you accompany me through my journey of traditional Chinese medicine. How are you today, Brian?
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Getting there. Okay, so today, Brian, we're going to be hearing all about your story and what you want to talk to us about. So tell us then, Brian, what is your story? What brings you to the wonderful world of TCM?
Well, it's been a hell of a journey, to be honest, Sarah. It started initially with kind of a crisis, as most people's journeys do.
Yeah.
Broke, and it was sort of one of those life-defining moments where you're actually forced to look at yourself.
Yeah.
While I was sort of in the corridor, I asked myself in the hospital, was like, what have you done so far? And I've done plenty of things, but nothing where you'd think, oh, well, that was worthwhile. I'd just achieved stuff. So
Okay.
I came to that situation and started looking after myself and stuff. And I was kind of thought, well, I've been told there's a possibility it could happen again. And I thought, well, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life waiting for it. So I'll find something that I can do that sort of, if it does go badly, I can just keep functioning.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how I did it. I decided that I'd do therapies, and I decided I'd learn to do massage. But me being me, it wasn't enough to sign up at the local college and just go and do a massage course. No, I had to find one in Devon, which I was a retreat. Before I went on that, I started doing yoga, and obviously yoga is very, very powerful. It can help you transition. But could I switch off? Could I help? So when everybody said, let's meditate, I'd sit there and I'd think about Radio 1 and think about everything. I just couldn't switch off.
Yeah.
Me being me as I was, I thought, well, I can do a course to sort that out, because if you're going to spend 2 days, it's better than spending a lifetime working on yourself. So I went and did Reiki, and that opened up a major door for me. And it made me think, because I'm an industrial chemist by sort of profession, it made me think, well, I've existed in it works or it doesn't, and that's it. Those two extremes had been my reality. And then I'd gone and experienced something that was completely not them. And so a door opened, and I thought, I started to sort of be a bit more introspective and think about things. And then I went to do my massage course, and that was transformational. It ran a massage, very powerful massage developed by an Australian guy. And then I flitted course to course to work on issues that I had. And then I discovered salt therapy with Chinese medicine. And the first course, which was Gua Sha, I think it was, I thought, well, where's this been all my life? And that was the start, really, of the journey, because I discovered in TCM something that kind of hit every level. And for the first 4 years of my journey, I kind of picked things to work on myself. And the last 3, I've been sort of looking more outwards, which is a bit more of an interesting journey, because you're not so much sort of worried about things and, well, I've got to sort that out. You more experience things as they happen, and every client's different, and there's sort of, you're part of the journey until they move on. But that, in a nutshell, quite a big nut to be fair, is kind of the journey so far, with a lot more detail, obviously, but it's sort of what should have been an absolutely life-destroying event for me, where it was like a valley of woe from then on, has actually been one of the most positive things that's happened to me.
That's amazing.
But it's been aided by the people I've met along the way, because once I went from the mainstream sort of true and false to the sort of anything's possible, but the probability changes, my mind's opened up, and I've opened myself up to new experiences, and I've met some amazing people. I've made some really good friends, and it's just been so far to this point fantastic. So let's hope the next half an hour bears up.
Yeah, bless you. Oh my God. I find it fascinating how, people are on this journey and something happens to them. So they go diving into it to find out how to heal themselves. Then that transpires into healing other people. I love it. I think it's amazing.
I think basically being in a dark place yourself allows you to empathise with other people being in a dark place. It's like sort of, I guess it's like talking to a professional footballer. Unless you've been on a pitch with 50,000 people screaming at you, you can't empathise with them. Because, it's the same with this journey. When you've been broken yourself, and when the worst has come for you, and you come out the other side, and you normally need help to come out the other side, it kind of does change you. And when people tell you their story, you kind of think, yeah, I understand that, I've been there, but also because you've come out the other side, you can say, well, if I can do it, anybody can.
Yes.
The thing,
Yes.
quite the positive thing about the whole, it's not sort of dwelling in a moment, it's trying to move beyond that moment and then experience life.
Yeah. Oh, that makes my heart sing to hear you say that. So, Brian, what is it that you wanted to share with us today? What are you coming on to talk about?
I guess the best thing I can share, because I'm at the stage where I'm building a clinic,
Yeah.
some of the experiences and the emotions from that thing, because obviously I've come from a scenario where I've always been employed.
Yeah.
I've always sort of, somebody's paid me, they've asked me to do a job and I've done it. And I've absolutely known where my barriers were and what I could do and what I couldn't do. To a situation where actually I'm the person who's responsible for the bills, who's responsible for the upkeep, who's responsible for getting out there and sort of meeting people. And it's been interesting for me to see which bits I've actually been successful at and which bits have actually been trouble for me. Because nobody can be everything. And like everybody, if the more you do, the more you encounter your own sort of flaws and weaknesses. But they're sort of learning opportunities as well, because they can change you for the better in ways that you never imagined.
Yes.
So I was going to talk a bit about that and the clinic and that kind of thing.
Fantastic. What a great subject, especially in this moment, like where the economy's unsure of itself, like, you know, costs are going up through the roof. And I think what's important as well is that when you do start your own business, you take it for granted just how much you need to do. So by you sharing this with us all, like it would be, you know, invaluable to some people who are just starting out. So thank you for that, Brian.
Yeah.
So I suppose we'll start with, what treatments do you offer then?
Well, I've got the traditional Chinese medicine, obviously acupuncture, massively powerful, Tuina, the Yang style, and I've also been developing the Yin style sort of just through sort of reading and practicing, because obviously we treat a range of clients and some of them just can't handle an elbow. So
Yeah.
basically, and also some of them, the issues are more of an emotional, mental, energetic. So I thought, well, I'm not going to deny them an experience that is actually amazing when you have Tuina. So I've started to work with more gentle, long sweeping, energetic, more dwelling those places to allow the energy to move, as well as the sort of deep, let's get an elbow in and get this tension gone. And right, so that is fascinating. The cupping, obviously, the gua sha, and also I've just qualified with herbs. I'm waiting for that to be agreed in China. So that's another, like, because one of the things, beauty of TCM, it treats at every level. It's several thousand years old, and it's not like one of these fads where you say, oh, well, the next fad is this because a celebrity's had it. It's been developed on people who basically needed it because they had nothing else. And you tend to find a lot of the old therapies, at the core of them, they had to work. And if they didn't, the person administering it tended to be in a lot of trouble with the person. So I've also done a few Western therapies, Reina massage, which I mentioned before. I've done spinal manipulations. One of the most amazing ones I've done is actually Lomi Lomi, because it's a very, very spiritual experience. And it's, imagine a massage where it just completely flows, where there's very, very little still space, but there's not much pressure, so it's just complete flow. It's supposed to be like waves breaking over you on a. So I can't give the beach, but certainly the actual sensation of having sort of 1 to 2 hours of just basically bliss. It's actually quite amazing to do as a practitioner as well, because you've got to be in a really, really loving zone. You can't do it with anything else on your mind but the actual sort of offering a really spiritual thing to the client. So it actually improves me a little every time I do it, because I've got to have still time for myself before I do it. And another one, Korean hand therapy, that is absolutely amazing. and it adds on to Chinese therapy so well. And it's kind of what I've done over the last couple of years is I've been looking not so much to myself but to other people, is I've tried to have therapies that help with the TCM. So you can sort of have your needles, you can have your Tuina, but you can have, say, something like Korean hand therapy, which you can do at home for yourself. So I'll teach the client to self-care, which is an important step in the healing, because obviously you have a client for 1 to 2 hours, if you're lucky once a week, especially in this economic climate. So if you can say to the client, look, I'll teach you how to care for yourself, then the next time I see you, rather than being down at the beginning again, you may be 2-3 steps up towards where you need to be. Then that's the approach I'm trying to take. I'm very much into client self-care, because it really, our jobs as therapists is to get them to the point where they don't need us.
Exactly.
And then hope come back for loamy and other things, and like the nice stuff from the thing, which is a kind of it's a treating yourself rather than treating an issue. So that's kind of, as I've developed as a therapist, that's kind of the approach I've taken. It's trying to go beyond the therapy slot, but also trying to have not an attachment to the client. That's one of the most difficult things when I first started with my own client people, because you invest time with somebody and you're so desperate for the healing outcome to be great. But it's that realization when they stop coming because you've actually sorted the problem out, that's actually a really big positive. It's not a negative, like, oh, well, yeah, I've done what they've asked me to do. That's the thing. And because of the power of TCM, that can happen quite quickly. And it's that's one of the things that's really infused me about practicing TCM, because basically the person practicing actually has an input to the treatment, but ultimately the person doing the healing is the person who's being treated. So my job is just to open doors for them to heal themselves, and if I'm good at opening the doors, we just get these to and they do it themselves, which is great. Rather than the system I went through with the NHS, which is like, this is your medication, and come back, we'll do your blood pressure, and we'll give you another medication. It's completely removed. I had no real involvement with it. That was the kind of that's the major difference, really. I'll let you get further.
You're all right. It's fascinating because I love your ethos. Like, you're doing this, you know, to teach them how to care for themselves. You're facilitating their healing, and I think that's what it should all be about. Not trying to get the client back and back and back and just leaving them at a loss when they're not around you.
I think Chris who said to it, Chris from Total Therapy said that basically your job really is to move the client on, because there's always somebody who's going to replace them. And that's the thing. There's the world, especially at this moment in time, there are so many people just getting by and just putting up with things and just constantly running themselves into the ground, that like there is always somebody to replace them. All your job is to basically get that person in front of you to the stage where they can live their life and hopefully go on and do something productive with it. And then there will always be somebody else. It's just having that faith, really. And that initially is a bit of an obstacle, because you think, I've only got 2 clients, and so what am I going to do when I've not got these 2 clients? But then you realise by helping those 2 clients, they go on and they're pretty much tell everybody they meet. And then everybody they meet, you might get another 3 people back. And it's a slow progression, but it's an honest way of actually growing things, because you've got to be on your game every time, rather than think, oh, well, I have this amazing multimedia marketing and people will come in. And whereas I'm kind of old-fashioned in that respect. If somebody wants my time, I completely give it, in regards, I'm completely 100% present, and I give them my best treatment. Now, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I've done my best. And so I not get attached to the ego side. But if it does work, I have that sense of well-being that I've helped another person on their journey. And that's what it's been all about for me. And I think from the therapists I've met, as I've trained and as I've done all these courses, I think that's what every therapist wants. Even though some people get distracted by the bright lights and the sort of the Facebook and whatever, every therapist wants to help somebody, and that's it. Right?
100%. on that note, because the treatments that you offer are not exactly mainstream, shall we say, so they're quite different. So how do you build a client base then? Because you said you're still working employment and then you're doing this as well. So how have you built up the client base?
A lot of hours, to be honest. If a client comes on, if it's possible for me to make an appointment for them, I will do. And I will introduce them to new things as they go on, but only if it's appropriate. If I get a client in and all they need is basically Tuina to sort of shoulder issue, then I'll just do Tuina. If I get a client that's more complicated, and one of the specialities I've kind of developed over my time practicing is chronic pain, big issues.
Okay.
Try and introduce other therapies in as they're appropriate on their journey, because the thing is about trying to fix yourself all the time. Sometimes you just need a day off from it. Sometimes you need something that's just good for you, good for the soul. And so I'll introduce other therapies, and either they cotton to them or they don't, or if they want to go back on just the pain journey, that's fine. But every therapy I've learned, I have practiced at some point. But the core is the TCM, is the Tuina, is the acupuncture, cupping. I've now Korean hand therapy. I'm adding on to every therapy because it's an amazing therapy, and it's very easy to self-care with it. So that's become quite important to me, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do a course and you have fun. I wonder why the hell I've done it. I think, well, why have I done this course? I've had a good time and everything, but why have I actually? And then within a month, I'll have a client and it's just perfect for them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's blown me away over sort of the journey is the fact that sometimes the most gentle therapy is the most effective, and it's just understanding where you are on their journey and what level their issue is, and that kind of. So it's just keeping your mind open completely. And there's many a time I've started a therapy, and about 10 minutes into it, I've just said to the client, well, no, this isn't the therapy you need. And I said, I want to try this if you're okay with it, and this is why I want to try it, and just completely change direction for them because it's been appropriate. And that's one of the beauties as well of Chinese medicine, because you can pick and choose. Sometimes that cup doesn't need to be there. What they actually need is some Tuina or vice versa. And that's one of the amazing.
So how do you decide then? Like, because I'm an alternative therapist myself. I only practice NAD of TCM, but I do Reiki and crystal healing and stuff like that. So when I've got a client coming to me, I try and channel in, and then something tells me what they need. Is that kind of the same way that you do it, or how do you know?
I trust the intuition really, because I listen to the client, I listen to what they tell me, I listen to what they tell me on the day, I listen to them when they're actually in the treatment, and I observe them, and I go with the intuition, because the thing is about the courses, they give you all the knowledge in your head, but ultimately I believe any therapy is actually done away from the head. Your knowledge is just there.
Yeah.
You can't do a therapy from a book.
No.
When I initially started, I thought you could.
Yeah.
You can't feel it's understanding, it's empathy. And if I'm putting a needle in somebody and basically it just doesn't feel like that's what they need, or it doesn't feel like they're actually getting anything from it, I'm quite happy to say, look, I'm going to change that now. If you get onto the couch, I'll do some sort of Tuina, or have you ever tried this therapy? And sometimes when the needle's in, I'll actually do Reiki on them, because it's basically they just need something other than the treatment.
Yeah.
And I've become a great believer as a practice that less is more. So needle wise, I use the minimum number of needles I can, and I'll use other therapies as well. And sort of every now and again I'll introduce to something like Raina, which is, I've been told by my female clients, is probably worse than childbirth when it's done properly. It says yes, it's quite an intense therapy, but sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes it's not, and when it's not, I'll stay away from it.
Yeah.
Certainly not a session for most people anyway.
We might have to have you back on to talk about Raina. So, what has business been like for you lately in the current climate?
It's been up and down during the summer because basically over the last 3 years, people have gone through everything. They've gone through sort of virtually the 10 plagues of Egypt,
Yeah,
and that drains people. Now, we've had a beautiful summer. Take away all the other economic nonsense and the war and everything. We've had a beautiful summer, and people just want to spend it outside and with the family. So what I found is the weekends have gone virtually dead, but the evenings, I've not had an evening off since June.
really?
Yeah, because people can think, well, after work I'll go and have a treatment, but at the weekend they think, right, I'm going to pack the car, I'm going to Wales, or I'm going to go and walking in the Peak District, or I'm going out for a pub lunch with the family. So I completely understand that, and sort of, I've remained open all the time, but I suspected, especially as the weather got better and better and better, that it would go quiet. And it's not troubled me at all
No.
because I tried to use that time to maybe dust off all the educational stuff so I can get on with the next step of the journey,
Yeah.
which kind of where I'm starting from now. But yeah, it's from every therapist I've spoken to, there are good times and there are bad times, there are busy times and there are times. It's understanding the reasoning. Now, if it was the depths of winter and people had absolutely nothing to do with the time and were sat at home in pain and they weren't going out to clinics, then I might be thinking, well, what am I doing wrong here and what do I need to do to change?
Yeah.
But at this moment in time, it's up and down, but it doesn't really bother me at all
Yeah.
because I understand where we are on the cycle. And as of the beginning of October, I've started to see more people booking at weekends, which
Right.
is kind of going back to where it should be.
I
And if we
see.
have a summer next year, I expect to be busier at the weekends than I've been this year. But
Yeah.
it's a understanding with a business, every business has its peaks and troughs. So it's understanding that running the clinic, that I'm going to have to accommodate that next year. And if it's better than I expect, that's fantastic. But if it's the up and down, then I think, well, yeah, I'm prepared for this. I'll sort it out.
Yeah.
Which has been a strange part of the journey because working for somebody, you know that your pay packet's coming in at the end of the month. You've got a rough idea of what it is, and you've got that security. So,
Yeah.
like being in transition to sort of working for myself has been very, very strange because all the insecurities do come out. Oh, well,
Yeah.
maybe they were lying when they said I'd sorted out that back problem they'd had for 20 years, or maybe it's something I said, and all of that comes speaks to human. It's inevitable that you do have sort of time of self-doubt, and one of the things over this, especially over this year, that I've sort of almost made peace with, that I'll have my days where I think, oh, well, oh, it's all going wrong. I'll have my days where I think I just can't keep up with the people coming in, and that's part of it. And
Yeah.
so
So, on that note, then, how do you deal with all the self-doubt and the insecurity and the worry?
I just basically, I've come to accept it. One of the things is basically is kind of a self-awareness that we all have an inner monologue, and hopefully most of the time it's saying things like, "Oh well, it's all right, Brian, you're doing okay," and that's it. But every now and again, for whatever reason, it'll say, "Oh God, no, oh this is never going to happen. No, oh, it's not going to take off. No, it's like, oh well, that last one, oh no." And everybody has it. What I've just sort of started to do is just basically just give myself space to deal with it and not dwell on it, because one of the things is, I think as Chris said on his emotional course, you can have 2,700 or something like that emotions, and you're right to feel every one of them at the time, as long as you don't dwell on that one. That's the thing, and it's the same with self-doubt. Everybody feels self-doubt at some point. Some people are better at hiding it than others. It's just a thing of, well, I've got that self-doubt, and if it's still there in a week, then I've probably got a problem. But if it's just a phase where I'm going through where I think, oh, well, what the problem is, I'll tend to look at what's going on with the business, where I am, and I'll put time into actually sorting that rather than worrying about the doubt. But so one of my weaknesses has always been social media, always, because I come from a sort of a generation really of men that you basically got on with things. And like one sentence was like a sort of soliloquy to me. If I couldn't say a sentence, then really I couldn't be bothered saying it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So social media, where you can go onto something and you can just say whatever you want, and people say whatever they want. It's not really a concept I've ever cottoned to, because I'd rather talk and listen to somebody face to face, because you don't see sort of the emotions or the expressions when you're going onto social media. All you've got is words.
Yeah.
And what words sort of mean something is actually the emotions that deliver them, and the expression of the person delivering them, and the body language, and the sort of, and that's the thing. So one of my biggest weaknesses, I do the posts, and I do the posts as an industrial chemist. So it'd be like, this is auricular acupuncture. That's a picture of an ear. This is a picture of a needle. It worked. That's it. And like, strangely enough, I didn't get really many views. So one of the things I've done is, rather than, because even though social media is important in this day and age, my focus has been on helping people and building knowledge and building myself into that position. I've taken on the help of somebody whose social media is a natural thing for, and she got my posts from sort of 8 views to 4,000.
Wow.
And which she's done an amazing job. A girl called Georgie, and she's done an absolutely amazing job. But what I found is I've got distracted in finishing my education. I've not given her the information to actually do it. So that's one of the other things that I've done. Sometimes, for the best of reasons, you lose presence with your journey, and you sort of get focused on a bit of it. So that's one of my next big things I'm going to do, is re-establish that presence and talk to her and say, like, what do you need from me? And I'll make sure that I deliver it. But it's been very, very daunting, because I look at a Facebook screen and I think, yeah, that's a picture of somebody's tea. And it's sort of getting that interest, because obviously it's a big part of people's lives now.
Yeah.
And when you're a sort of a non-user, actually stepping into that world and being able to speak the language, it's sort of, it would be easier being dropped off in Shanghai.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. It's alien to me because I don't use it in my personal life. So try to start selling myself on my business, I'm like, oh, this just feels weird.
Yeah. So what I've tried to do is basically let the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And if I do get a claim where I can't help, the first thing to say to them as part of the introduction to me in the treatment, if I can't treat you, it just means I can't treat you. It doesn't mean you can't be treated.
Yeah.
It just means that I open the right doors for you. For whatever reason, I'll try and help you find, or you go and find somebody who can. Because I'm a great believer there's absolutely no issue that can't be resolved one way or another. And it's just getting the right person to help you on the journey. But one of the things I started earlier, I tried to make myself as pat, so I got my ego completely out of the way, was sometimes it won't be me to help the person. Sometimes all I can do is help them to move on to somebody else.
Yes.
And I'm fine, because basically, if that wasn't the case, then I would now actually be a billionaire on some Bible channel in America saying, don't know your baldness and stuff like that. It's that understanding that there's only so much we can do. Sometimes it feels like a miracle, but you're going to have times when somebody turns up and you're just not the person for them.
Yeah.
Because healing is an energetic thing, which is why Reiki is becoming so successful and everything. It is an energetic thing. If you're working with somebody's energy and you're just not the person to work, regardless of having the best needling skills in the world, or the best Tuina, or the best cupping, or the best Reiki massage, whatever, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you're just not the person for them.
Yeah.
But if you head that you're going to be the person for everybody, then that's where the self-doubt comes in.
Right. Yourself
every now and again I will treat somebody, and sometimes we'll look at each other and think, well, why have you actually come to me? Because your issue isn't, I'm never going to be the person to help with it.
Yeah.
And I'll do the best treatment for them, but I understand normally before they even left the room that even though I've given my best, I'll not see them again.
Yeah.
And I've no, because healing is a journey, and sometimes you get your healing from the strangest places, and sometimes you get your healing from places you never would have imagined visiting, and sometimes your healing's all in yourself anyway, and sometimes you need that reassurance and that space to actually get things off your chest, so to say. You can suddenly find, actually, I just need to go and take up yoga, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to go home and talk to my husband, and something like that. And I accept that, but I also accept that there's sometimes that people will come to me and they've been in pain for 20 years, and I will be able to make a massive difference. But it's me being able to help them to make a massive difference.
Yeah.
That's the skill I've tried to focus on, helping people to help themselves. Because actually going to somebody and sticking needles in you and thinking, oh, well, that's amazing, I'll only get that somewhere else, is a lot less powerful than going to somebody and putting needles in and saying, I'm opening that channel and this is what's going to happen. But if you go home and you have to think about this and you do that, it'll carry that process on. And if you try that as well, then you're actually going to start treating yourself. Yeah. And that's a whole of a journey, which is completely enjoyable because there's no pressure on either person.
Yeah.
There's not to sort of constantly get good results or worry about bad results, or for them to worry that you're not going to turn up on your therapy or whatever. You do your best for the person and help them on their journey, and that's it. And that's one of the major rewards I've got out of this so far. But just to help somebody along and know that you've made a bit of a difference, even if it's just for a week, you've made a difference to somebody's life. And I think back at a therapist, they'll say the same thing.
Okay, and my final question to you, Brian, because I know you've got to get off, you're so busy, but what would your advice be for anyone who's just starting their own practice or thinking of doing it and they've got all this self-doubt going on? What would you say?
I would say do it, but accept it to be a roller coaster. All you can do is try and make sure that the ups and downs are close together. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're going to have times where you feel like the world has blessed you, and you're going to have a time where you think that everything's just gone. But as long as you can sort of work on balancing those out so that the dips aren't so deep and the ups aren't so high, then you can actually just start to enjoy it. And that's kind of the phase I'm at now. Is I've got the clinic, I'm present at the clinic, I've no desire for any further education for a good while. And it's time to work on the next bit of myself, which is actually going out into the world and saying, look, here I am, this is what I'm offering, it really works, I'll do my best to help you. Come, pay me, enjoy the journey. Because it is a journey, and it's sort of the issues that troubled me at the very beginning of self-doubt and where's the next client coming from and how am I going to make the rent here and all that stuff. They kind of go mostly, and then it's you think about the next stage. And I've looked at it as kind of a self-development, because I'm now being forced to look at the things that I've shied away from. Like I'm now being forced to think about social media. I've now started to do events where I go and meet people and say, like, this, I'm not a natural salesman. I can talk about what I do passionately, but if you say there's sell that, then everything goes blank. So at the end of the month, I'm actually in a room full of menopausal women selling my menopause treatment.
Wow.
Which is daunting to say the least.
Yeah.
But I'm so passionate about what I can do using TCM and some of the other therapies that I will overcome that sort of discomfort and the doubt and being out of place. And if I can help one person on the journey, if we can take away some of the symptoms for one person, help her navigate what is a natural process without any kind of self-loathing that seems to be piled on you these days for a sort of, oh, well, something to be ashamed of, you're getting old. Where Chinese medicine says it's the next stage of your evolution as a woman. You get to leave a lot of rubbish behind and actually become you. And So that's the next. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be uncomfortable, and I'm going to do my best to just help a couple of people, and then I'll pick something else, and I'll go and be uncomfortable, and that's the next stage of my development. It's going from internalizing everything to going out into the world and experience discomfort and new people, and accepting sometimes I'll fall flat on my face, but in the process I'll get up and I'll think, well, oh, that's where that bit went wrong, that's where that bit went wrong. Oh, I can work on that, because there's no issue you can't work on.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be perfect, does it, first time?
No, and I think that is one of the big troubles with sort of the society we've created now. There's a false perfection that's sold to people that never exists. Like, if you look at the so-called perfect people now, when you look at them without the sort of all the other stuff that's put on, all the changing of images, all of it, they're just normal people. They're just being sort of elevated to this class of, well, if you buy this, you can be like them, or if you do this, you can. So people are just growing up with massive insecurities, and it's both sexes now. Women know it's both sexes, and I'd rather just go and say, look, this is what's on offer. This will help you, and this is how it will help you. But ultimately, it's freedom of choice. And that's the thing. I just want to give people another choice.
Fantastic.
And then sort of probably after I've done my stint, not in education, I'll probably find another thing.
Yes, ours.
It's been at least 3 days since I've done a course.
I know what you mean. Oh my God. Well, Brian, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. You're an incredible human being. Well done.
No, it's been a privilege, and it's because one of the things that I should have mentioned earlier, especially if you come to therapies a bit later in your life, sort of, it's going to be difficult for people who know you to get their heads around it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've gone from being one thing to another almost overnight. And it's very, very difficult sometimes, especially me. Like, I used to be sort of a beer drinking, sort of rugby watching, sort of industrial chemist. Everybody had me in a peg. That's it. That's the whole. All of a sudden, I'm coming out. I'm just learning how to needle people and treat people. And it's like sort of, people just don't know how to handle it. But one of the things I will say, if you give people the space and realise that it's you changing, not them, then things tend to just work out. They get their heads around your new identity. But preach. Because basically it is your change. It's your change in direction, your change in what you want to do with your life.